We're very lucky to have here today two guys who were active in the scene back then and have been involved in Seattle music ever since. And to my left we have Robert Nesbitt, from originally from KYAC and various other institutions. Hey everybody. Thank you.
Check, testing, 1, 2.
To his left we've got Tony Gable, who's a musician from the Seattle scene, and he's worked around the world, you know, well, I suppose a bassist in that time, and we're lucky to have these guys here today, so thank you for having us here. So I mean, I don't know, because you guys are close to the source, so it's hard, but to kind of have the same perspective as what I might have coming from New Zealand, and kind of just putting in that Wheedle's Groove CD and wondering, hey, what is this? And wondering what it was, and just getting this hit of this really incredible underground soul music, which I'd never heard before. And I've liked to go around and try to check out as much rare stuff as I can, and then to hear that stuff just blew me away. Right. And I don't know how it is for you guys, if it's like something you just take for granted, or if it's something that you see as a special time. Well,
I know for me, as a kid growing up back in Western New York, I lived in a neighborhood that was full of music. I come from a family who is very much entrenched in music. Music all around me. My heritage is based upon music, from gospel to blues to jazz to whatever. So I was always a part of that. That was driven through me, was a part of me, always in me. As a kid growing up, I listened to just about everything. My mother listened to all types of music, from classical to gospel to, I listened to the Dorsey Brothers on radio. I listened to Frank Sinatra. And as a kid who grew up in the 70s, we watched this movement, the genesis of rock and roll, which came about from gospel, of course, from jazz, to some intermingling of pop music as well. So coming up in the mid-50s, these things were starting to happen. The Chuck Berrys, the James Browns, the Elvis Presleys. So all this music was part of my early coming up. Being that I lived in New York and I spent a lot of time in Detroit, Michigan, I would always travel to Detroit, which is the home of Motown. Mm-hmm. So in the late 50s and early 60s, this was, you know, just blowing up. It was just a big, huge expansion of music, something new that America had never heard from before, to something that was going to pretty much explode internationally. So that takes you through the 60s, into the late 60s, into the 70s here. I wasn't the only person that felt that way. There were artists here in Seattle who had those same types of feelings about music and a desire to be a part of that. What happened with that is that I would say most of the artists felt that they wanted to be a part of that. So what they did was, through their God-given creative talents, created some music, something that was, you know, pleasing to them, something that they felt that that people around them wanted to hear. Yeah.
So I mean, there's that for you, Tony, like coming up as a musician in Seattle, because you weren't always from Seattle.
No.
Where were you originally from?
Well, I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas, but I'm an Air Force brat, and so we moved about every 4 years, and I actually kind of grew up in Great Falls, Montana, not exactly a home of soul station. So I didn't really get to hear a lot of soul music other than, you know, Motown and stuff like that. Actually, my influences at the time were the British Invasion, Beatles, Dave Clark 5, you know, that's all I listened to. Rolling Stones, Herman's Hermits, you know, stuff like that. And then when we moved back to Texas, my cousins were like, oh my God, what's with the bell bottoms, the polka dot shirt, the hip huggers, the Dutch boy, the granny glasses? And they just warned me, you know, we're going to get in a fight every day, because I went to half black and half Chicano, you know, Latino school. So they said, we're going to be fighting every day. You got to get out of those clothes and put on some Converses, some sharkskin pants, some bandlons. And so I totally got immersed into
Sharkskin suits.
yeah, and soul music. So kind of from this area, totally over. And when we moved up here to the Northwest, I decided I didn't want to move again every 4 years. So I went to Western to be a fine arts teacher. Actually, I have a degree in graphic design. And by the way, a lot of people met in art school. U2, you know, Talking
Mick
Heads.
Jagger was an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I met musicians, and, you know, they were cool. You know, as an art major, you really weren't cool. And I'd be in my room painting, oil paintings, and all the musicians are partying, getting free beer, a lot of great-looking women, free popcorn. So I said, hey, I want to be in the band. They said, you don't play an instrument. Oh. Then I saw the movie Woodstock and saw Santana, and that just blew me away. I was like, I don't know what these guys are beating, but I think they're called congas or something, bongos. I'm just going to teach myself how to play, because, again, there's not a heavy Latino community in Bellingham. So I just started listening to records. My mother had Mongo. Besides Bobby Blue Bland, she also had Mongo Santa Maria. So I listened to that. You know, James Brown had some congas, a lot of Motown. Actually, as I started playing, I started noticing percussion more. So if you listen to a lot of the old Motown hits, the guy's name was Eddie Bongo Brown. And, you know, he'd be playing bongos, and they had great percussionists, tambourines, all kind of stuff. So I really got into it, talked myself into the band by doing the posters and designing outfits, and they let me in the band. And then we moved to Seattle in '71, and about that time, that's when I met Bobby, Robert Nesbitt. He was the DJ at KYAC, and we struck up a friendship, and we've just been hanging ever since. You know, the times change, the music changes, but, you know, the friendship has been there the whole time.
I wanted to be a musician coming up. I was in junior high school and high school. I played bass, but I played so poorly. It kind of reminds me of a lot of managers of baseball. Baseball managers usually were not great. They were great position players, but they knew the game very well. I was not a good musician, but I enjoyed music so much. I said, boy, what is the best thing for me to do if I enjoy music so much? Hey, you know what I'll do? I'll play records on the radio. So I was 16 years old, living in Buffalo, New York, and I got my first job in radio. Then in '72, I moved to Seattle. I think I met you like a week after I got here. Tony was playing a gig at this place called the Northlander. You remember that gig? That was back, 30 some odd years ago, but we've been friends ever since. So.
But, just when we moved here, obviously Hendrix was a big influence. The first name of our band was called Funk Experience. And my first gig was with a group called, we opened for a group called the Chamber Brothers. I don't know if you guys are probably too young to remember Time Has Come Today. Yeah. So that was my first gig, and I was like, wow, this is cool. And, and when you started playing, you think, well, we're going to have a hit record next year. We're going to be huge, touring all over the world.
Of course.
That didn't happen for about another 15 years, another 20 years. But luckily, my mom was always supportive, and when I told her I was going to quit college to go play music at bongos, she really wasn't too keen on that. Well, as long as you don't move home and don't go to jail, that's cool with me.
See, because you're always going to be 20.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about being 30, 25, or having mortgages or anything. You just want to play music.
Yeah, and we just played, at that time, Seattle, I was a group called Cold Bowler Together, but when we moved here, a lot of groups had horns, so they were more like Tower of Power, not really a lot of background singers. It was a horn group with a lead singer, whereas we were kind of the opposite. We had a very small rhythm section, and at first no keyboards, but we sang a lot, kind of like Bloodstone. I don't know if anybody remembers that group. So we sang a lot, and that was what being a standout from some of the other bands. And plus we used to do the Funky Chicken and the Penguin and dance when we played. And
this is something that I'm kind of trying to get a handle on, but it seems like there were a lot of bands in Seattle at that time doing, playing party music, soulful party music.
Well, a lot of them were on Wheedle's Groove.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, that's what sort of...
I would say at one time there was probably 20 working bands that worked every week. And there were venues where all of these bands could find work from Canada, from Vancouver, down to Tacoma. So there was never a lack of places for bands to play. Plus, the radio station was so key in supporting those bands. Every band had a record. You know, everybody had a record. And it was incumbent upon us, and me specifically as the program director and the music director of that radio station, to support those bands. And most of this music was really good music. It just blew us away that this music was actually coming out of Seattle. Everything else on our playlist was coming from Atlanta, Detroit, Philadelphia, those different sounds that we were so immersed in that we didn't realize that we were developing a Seattle sound. There was a Seattle sound.
So that was everybody at the radio station was feeling the same way.
Absolutely.
It was like something you had to get behind and
Absolutely.
support.
Well, we kept thinking that, okay, San Francisco was exploding. So you keep going up and north, well, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, we were next.
Right.
And a lot of that did happen later, with the garage, grunge, and rock. That did happen. But in that soul era, there was just so much music and so many different kind of bands. Pure vocalists, horn bands, funk bands. And there were a lot of rock groups playing around too. But we kind of were on different sides of the town. Right. There was not necessarily a set of railroad tracks, but we kind of played certain clubs, and then they played different kind of clubs. Then occasionally we came together and played. There was a group called Ball and Jack that was on Columbia. So again, there were some groups that were, and Hendrix was huge, of course, and a lot of groups from California, like War, for example, would come up here. A lot of people came up here to gig in Portland and in Seattle, but a lot of those groups are represented on Wheedle's Groove. There was a group called Acapulco Gold. I mean, just tons of great bands. But we did play every day of the week. I mean, that, we didn't make any money, but we did play a lot.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just play a song off Wheedle's Groove, maybe a Cold, Bold and Together track, just to give people an idea of what we're talking about, like the sound that we're talking about with that?
Too bad they can't see the photo, because I designed the outfit, so we had these huge lapels that were out to here. Huge bell bottoms. I mean, two people could stand in one of my bell bottoms.
They were spacesuits. Actually, the big spacesuits, right?
Oh, this is going to be modern. You got a Wheedle's Group CD.
I got one. So just imagine those spacesuits at this point.
Big froze, used to. Let me make
Hold on together.
a couple comments. If you know about producing, you don't want a band to produce a song. Because when we mixing, I can't hear the bass enough. Bass is up.
Yeah.
I don't hear my congas. Congas are up. I don't hear my voice. So nothing really changes. The mix is just all in your face. So after these recordings, then we started getting producers to help us. And it was pretty funny. And by the way, that's one of the first recordings that Kenny Gorlick is on. You just know him as Kenny G.
Yeah, well, he was ripping it up there. I heard that. It sounded great. And so you had horns at this point, that's something you added to the band,
Well, we had to add horns.
Yeah.
Because we were singers.
Yeah.
But most of the bands in Seattle had horns, so we said, okay, let's get some horns. And then somebody brought this kid from Franklin, Kenny, and I said, I don't want him in the band. He's kind of geeky. We used to call it a poodle instead of an afro. He had all this big curly hair. And plus most of the bands that we were kind of looking up to, like the Earth, Wind and Fire, the Kool and the Gangs, all these groups we got to open for later, so it was nice. Ohio Players. Yeah. They didn't have any black people in them. Any white people in them. So it was like, wait a minute. But then we started thinking about what War does, and so does Sly and the Family Stone, So then we kind of changed our thinking. You know, this is early 70s, so we were right at the height of Black Power. And so we're like, well, I don't really want to integrate. So actually through music is where I learned a lot of different things about diversity. Like the first time we went over to our keyboard player, Philip Wu, who was actually the keyboard player in Maze. I don't know if you've ever heard of Frankie Beverly and Maze. I saw this 100-pound bag of rice, and I was like, you guys do eat rice. I didn't know. And they didn't know what I was talking about with chitlins and greens, you know, and I didn't know anything about Yiddish things or, you know. So it was great, you know, for all the groups in Seattle, just getting to know each other in the band and meeting other band members. And it was a very healthy and strong competition. Because one night on Tuesday, you'd go see a band like Family Affair. What are they doing? You check them out, and then you'd go home and practice. And then you know, you break out your new stuff. And at first, most of the groups in Seattle were playing covers. So we played as soon as Earth, Wind and Fire's album came out, we got it and learned it and be the first band in the city to play the, you know, the Earth, Wind and Fire song or the Dramatics or Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. We actually got to open for it. So we had a lot of opportunities, and a lot of it has to do with Robert and the radio station and promoters thinking, hey, you know, we have some pretty good groups here, so we're going to allow them to open. And so, like,
it was just an opportunity for the local artists to play on, you know, they have their name on the billboard with a major act. Tony's band, Kobo Together, played with just about everybody. Every time somebody would come, who did you guys play with? You played with Kool and the Gang, played with Earth, Wind and Fire, played with Bobby Womack.
What's the guy, the Funky Chicken? What's his name?
Rufus Thomas.
We backed up Rufus Thomas.
And back in the 70s, Seattle was the type of town, as I mentioned before, where there were so many different venues, and it was a 7-night-a-week town.
Yeah.
Right now, Seattle's a 1-night-every-2-week town, you know, where you really have to look for something to happen here. And it used to be a time when, I know, working at the radio station, somebody would be at the Isaac Hayes would be at the Trojan Horse, Donny Hathaway would be playing at the Paramount, B.B. King would be at the Heritage House, and we had to juggle who we're going to interview that day, because conceivably we would have, and I remember this happened. One time B.B. King was going to come in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to do an interview, but at the same time we had Isaac Hayes scheduled. You know, and that was just like a great problem to have, but you don't have that in Seattle. But getting back to what was happening with the quote-unquote local bands, they had an opportunity to show their talents on a major stage. When the artists that they opened for went away, they always talked about these guys, and it was just, and plus it just made them feel good.
And you learn from actually playing with the people you looked up to, that they were also having difficulty. At the time when we played with Kool and the Gang, even though they had hit records, we're playing at a small club, 7 nights we opened for them.
We're broke.
And they really weren't doing that well, and we're like, wait a minute, we're trying to get to where you are, and you're saying it's kind of tough?
Well, everybody thought that just because you had a record deal, you had money.
Yeah. And
that wasn't the case.
Yeah. So it took crossing over and getting on the pop charts for a lot of these major artists to start making some dough. I remember when Earth, Wind and Fire was pushing their own equipment just like we were. We're like, where's your roadies? You know, and stuff. But again, we kind of stopped playing covers all the time because everybody was starting to find their own voice, their own perspective. So groups like Cooking Bag and you know, Family Affair and Black and White Affair, Broham, everybody started saying, okay, it's great we're playing all these other people's songs, but are they going to remember us? So everybody just started doing originals. And sometimes we just play jazz. One time we got fired. We're supposed to be playing a BG song. You know, that's when I had the first tenor and falsetto. But
lonely days, lonely nights, where would I be without my woman?
Yeah. But so the club owner wanted us to play a Bee Gees song because that was the thing. This is just in the transition from original and heavy R&B music to disco, which we were like, oh man, do we have to, you know, Bee Gees are cool, but do we have to play the hi, staying alive? You know, better than that though. And so the bass player started playing Red Clay off of CTI. do 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 do
Freddie
do,
Hubbard.
and we just broke into a jazz song. We got fired. They just said no, only dance music, only disco. Well, so everybody, I can't speak for everybody, but most of the groups just started doing their own things and just making their own records and selling them out of the back of their car. And these guys would help us by playing our music on the radio. And we'd be driving down the street, and that was such a cool feeling to hear your song on the radio. Hey, this is Robert Nesbitt, and this is Cole Bowling Together. And then people didn't believe us. We used to drive an old Buick Deuce and a Quarter, and we'd roll down the windows. That's us. That's us. That's us. Oh, yeah, right. You guys with the big hats and the fros. We never combed our hair, by the way. When we take off our hat, we'd have this big fro sitting out here in a little clump. But that's another story. But, but a lot of competition, but a lot of support. And then when Robert got into owning a nightclub downtown was a cool thing. Downtown, we're playing downtown. The Golden Crown, then that was just a lot of other opportunities. And not only just the local and regional acts, but also, Bobby and those guys were bringing everybody in.
One of the other thing, when you're talking about these bands, especially some of the bands that are on the Wheedle's Groove record, when one band had a record, immediately the other bands came out with a record. So the pressure and the onus was on us at the radio station to play that record, and play that record a lot. Robbie Hill is one of the great stories. Robbie Hill of Family Fair, if you guys are going to be around this Friday, you'll see him perform. Robbie Hill had like it was like the Sopranos. He had his own little cartel going on. He had people on the phone calling in the radio station, because the way that we judged what record was going to be #1 was by sales and requests. So sales were never going to be, and we never saw sales, Zoom, you never saw them in the triple digits, 100 records coming out of a store. But we usually used requests. Robbie Hill would have his mother, his aunt, his cousin, his everybody calling 3 and 4 times an hour using different disguises of their voice just to get the request in, so we can tabulate the request and bring the record to #1. But there was always this competition between the artists. The good part for me was that my partners and I, we had a nightclub, so we also had, which is so bad, we were playing the records on the radio, and also we were booking the bands in the clubs, so it worked very well for us, And so the band, and we paid the bands quite well. I mean, we did.
Except we had all those stairs.
Yeah, well, it was
moving a B3. You guys know what a B3 is?
We had to move our own.
That's a hernia maker.
Equipment. But it's a big difference now. Nowadays, what do you need to perform?
Well,
nothing. You
bring
can put
a
everything on
controller
your back,
and a G4 power book, and you can just plug in and get all your pads.
But all these bands were. I mean, they were. Every band was different. They competed.
Different outfits. Everybody had their own.
Different type of music, different outfits, but.
And this was like a friendly rivalry.
It was. It was. Everybody supported.
And it seems like
everybody enjoyed each other.
But it was competition.
Yeah.
You wanted to be the best. You wanted to be #1. But you'd go see another band and say, "Wow, man, did you hear that arrangement?"
And you'll hear the same story not only in Seattle, but you'll hear the same story with bands in Atlanta, New York, Chicago. That's how it was.
There was a group
but
from
we
Portland.
were just, we were very myopic about it because we were right here in Seattle, and that's the only thing that we cared about. We look back at it now, and we say that, boy, it would have been great if we would have gotten our records distributed, some of these records distributed around the country. Well, that wasn't to be back in those days.
Well, one of the logical thinking was, if you were so great and you had such great original tunes, you would be discovered. So we kept waiting for Quincy Jones to be sitting there to go into a club. Quincy Jones here, okay, fork up the fro, shine your shoes, and stuff. And we just thought that was the way it was going to happen. But some of the reality is that you had to leave and either go to. Well, Hendrix went to England, but you had to go to L.A. or New York or meet somebody. A couple of the groups did finally meet Quincy Jones and had some opportunities as well. But you just kept making records. I think we made 4 singles, and we just kept recording again. And then later, as you get a little bit older, then you realize, we got to get an agent, or we got to get someone that will connect us to some music. There was a group that did take that advice, and they moved to Los Angeles, the group called Pleasure. And they did move from Portland down there, and then they got a real record deal with a whole album. Because most of our records were 45s. No one actually, did anybody ever make an album? I don't think so. Everybody just had 45s, and then, you had enough material for an album, but,
This is Pleasure.
Yeah, so.
Look at the artwork, wow.
Yeah.
The thing about these 45s is that I've heard that lately they've been changing hands for large sums of money, and they've become very rare items. Collectors are after them.
Pat Wright.
I also heard, a Cold, Bold and Together 7 was going for, a couple of $1,000s or something. I heard that. I read that.
I got a few left.
Hey, well,
Oh, wow.
If I didn't know that they were selling for that, I'll have to dig some out. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well,
But when my kids hear me singing, they're like, "Dad, is that you?" And they see me, I was like major less. This was in the starving artist days. So when they look at these photos, I'm like, who's that? Who's this guy who's looking like, Kareem? Because I was, the tallest person in the band and skinny, and, I was helping these big giant fros, and we sang high. Well, 20, 30 years later, you hear my voice now, and I don't even smoke cigarettes.
What about, if I could ask a question, maybe they may be interested in the recording process. How did that happen? How did you guys get together, and where did you go?
Well, we went to K. Smith. At first, the first time we recorded, they were building a recording studio. And we were at a college, and they said, "Hey, do you guys want to test this out?" No walls, no baffles, nothing. The chords were just running across. We'd trip over the chords. We tracked it. They gave us a tape. We turned it into a 45.
So
whenever you had any,
was it 4-track?
that was dedication to our wonderful, beautiful black sisters.
Yeah.
A single that we.
You recorded it 4-track, or?
I don't even know. I think it was like 1.5 track. The way this studio.
How long did it take? How long did it take for you to go and record that?
Well, there was no overdubs.
Okay.
That's the other thing. When we were recording back in the day, you just went in and played, because you'd been playing these songs so much. You just went into the studio and they just tracked it, and then, maybe you'd overdub, later, maybe a solo or something like that, or some vocals. But no, everything was just live, and the group sounded like they did in person, because it was, that was it. It was a real deal. And then, synthesizers started coming in after the B3 and the Rhodes. The hallmark or the standard was a Rhodes or a Wurlitzer and a B3 and giant amps, and that's the way it was.
Yeah.
So it's, something I think that everyone can take from this is supporting your community, and actually getting and helping your fellow musicians, and actually, I think around the world it seems that a lot of scenes seem to be quite separated and try to sort of just push their own music and look after themselves, but it seems like this is an example of, the radio station helping out the scene, the individual bands helping out the scene, and these bands are actually, the people had an identity from being in these bands. It seems like these bands did a lot together, not just play music. They were together a lot, traveling, working on the road, and in some cases even like living in the same house. I don't know if that's true.
Oh, yeah. Many of us had band houses were notorious. I think perhaps the Seattle police visited a few in those days. In college, it was the Kager days, but in band days, it was a little bit different. But, and everybody, or most, I keep saying everybody, but I know in a CBT, we just call ours CBT, we didn't have day gigs. We were musicians, that was it. And many times in our experience, the lights would turn off, we didn't pay the light bill, we'd play all week for $200, not $200 each, $200 total. And we used to have this little thing where when we got paid, everybody wanted to go to the store for shopping. That's the only way you got what you wanted to eat. Because we didn't split up the money. It was a real commune. If the bass player needed an amp, We just took the money and bought the bass player and amp. It wasn't like, now where the guitar player has 50 guitars and, it was very communal. And that's the way we just stuck together, and people kind of align us with, well, were you guys kind of like a gang? No, we're a band, but, you protected your crew, and everybody's band had their own crew and stuff. And we did a lot of things for the community. Yeah. We played the Black Community Festival, got to meet Melvin Van Peebles.
And another thing is that a lot of these bands were excluded from the mainstream.
Yeah.
That was one of the things too, because of where we were socially at that time. That era, where this era was socially, you weren't going to get invited by the promoter who worked with KJR to come and play a gig over in West Seattle. That wasn't going to happen. So if you were a soul band, you were pretty much, we're going to play a soul club, you're going to play soul festivals, and that was it then. Forget about it. No matter how great a song Cold Bone Together puts out. And Cold Bone Together had a song, which is not on Wheedle's Groove, which is called Love Song Turned Sad. Great song, it's a ballad. I listen to it every day. It's a great song. That record never made it to, quote unquote, no more air quotes, folks. I promise, no more. Okay, no, it never made it to pop radio, top 40 radio, but it was a big record here in Seattle. It actually got played down in Portland, and I think that it sold well up in Canada. But everything was fractionalized. Everything was just broken down to just that one area. We really didn't get the support from the pop audience.
And it was rare to have that opportunity to play at different clubs. I remember one time going to a club way in the north end, and they thought we were moving the equipment. So they kept saying, when is the band going to get here? We don't have roadies. What are you talking about? We are the band.
Yeah.
And so there must be a mistake. You guys can't play here.
I mean, that's how it was there.
I said, what do you mean?
We hated it.
I'm sorry, but you can't play.
Yeah.
I said, oh, okay. Let me get this right. You didn't see the promo picture, did you? No. Oh, someone had booked us. I said, okay. All right, if you don't want us to play, give us the check and we'll put our equipment back in the van and go someplace else. And that's what happened. They would not let us play. And then and this used to happen. Sometimes some of the booking agents would just send you to gigs. We went and played a gig in Aberdeen, which is kind of like being in the middle of Kansas. So here's this all-black band playing, Kool and the Gang, Parliament, tear the roof off the Secretary, and it was like, we're not going to get out of here. We're going to get killed. It was just like the Blues Brothers. Right. There was that fence up and stuff. It was
chicken
like
wire, huh?
It was like, whoa. Yeah. And so, fortunately, TC and Jamar, they were twin brothers, played the guitar and bass. They were very musical, so we basically just played this one country riff for 2 hours, and everybody just took solos about 50 times around. How y'all doing? We just kind of changed the semantics a little bit, because forget about getting paid, we just wanted to be able to get back in the van and get out of there and stuff. But actually, we had a great time.
Right.
The people liked us. We had a good time. We threw in a couple soul songs there that we, thought they had heard of before, and it turned out okay. Yeah. But there was.
But then there's other bands. I mean, if you look at some of the other bands on the Wheedle's Groove, there were clubs that, like the Golden Crown, which was our club, that played Cold Bone Together, Robbie Hill, the Family Affair, Black and White Affair, Hot Ice. They would play there.
Oh, yeah.
But then there were guys like Overton Berry,
right,
who would not play. He would not play the Golden Crown. He would play more of the, what would you call it? Most of the.
Well, he's more sophisticated.
He would play
more
he would
jazz
play
trio.
Right, more of a trio, black tie type of affairs. They played the Trojan Horse.
Right,
the different types of clubs there were at the time here in Seattle. The Golden Crown, Soul Street, the Gallery, New Chinatown District Tavern,
Heritage
where
House.
your funk clubs, Heritage House. Well, Heritage
Yeah.
House also
Yeah.
played people like,
Yeah.
played those type of bands like Arthur Price, Soccer, those guys. But the more upscale clubs, such as the Trojan Horse and the Doubletree, what's it called?
Doubletree.
Yeah.
And what-
Would play some of the more upscale type artists, you know, the Overton Bears.
And tons of rock groups were playing at the time. Actually, during the same period, a group with two sisters were doing pretty well, and they were coming up the ranks. They're called Heart. And so there was a lot of other music going on as well, and you know, it was getting some great airplay, and they were getting some good deals and stuff. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just people didn't know about the soul scene in Seattle, because when you think about Seattle, if I'm in other parts of the country and say I'm from, you know, I live in Washington, they automatically think I'm talking about D.C. No, the other one, you know, with the log cabins and, you know, Lewis and Clark, remember that? Yeah, and so, but that's just the way it was. It was just unfortunate that a lot of people did not get to participate outside of some of the audiences in our community.
Did you see it? Did you actually experience it as it changed, as the scene changed from this period, and maybe, you know, DJs started to maybe command, you know, all the salaries, or what actually happened there with the thing with live music? And
I'll
how
say
did it
this:
sort of, did it?
our keyboard player Manuel Carrillo, his son is a DJ. He's gigging more than we are. It's amazing. You know, I don't know about the DJ scene.
But how did it go down with the scene where bands are working, you know, 7 days a week, and then over time that starts to
that happened
change.
with us at our club. You're talking about from the '70s when where there was where there were bands playing all the times to the time where pretty much the disco took over.
So that was disco. That was
I mean, it was just marketing. It was just the market, you know. I know our club, the Golden Crown, which was right across the street over on 4th Avenue, we saw a way to make money by playing recorded music, which broke my heart. And of course, it broke the heart of the bands that we were playing every week, you know. So we're saying like, hey, we're going to pay this band, you know, $900 a week, or we're going to pay a DJ, this is back in like '77, we're going to pay him $200 a night. So, you know, it was just mathematics.
And like, the club owners would also make a comment, well, we don't have to deal with your attitudes, you know, the zigzag paper, or any of that stuff. All we have to do is get a DJ. We don't have to worry about load-ins, feeding you, fights, groupies, nothing of that stuff, you know. So it was a huge change, and then musicians either started doing something else, maybe some people actually did get day jobs, or moved in different areas of music, like I wanted to be more involved in jazz. And so people became producers, writers, other things. And so I don't know what it's like on the scene as far as racism or prejudice, but, you know, I'm sure it is improved. I mean, Seattle is a very diverse place, but racism in the Northwest is not like it used to be, where it's definitely in your face. If a guy's riding on a horse, a white horse, and he's got a cone on his head and a sheet, clearly he doesn't like you. Right. Whereas here, in certain areas, not only here in the Northwest, but sometimes prejudice is hidden. So it's, hi, how you doing? Great to see you. You know, but...
Right, okay.
Right now it's about money.
So it's a little different. I would prefer knowing exactly where everybody stands, you know, rather than having to guess, but...
So, yeah, I guess, Robert, from your point of view as a club owner, you got to see the way society goes through different cycles, and what happens on the street, and what happens at night with club culture and whatnot.
Right.
And you must have seen some changes and some developments in your time.
Well, I did. You know, like I said, I mean, it was almost like it was overnight. This is the late to mid '70s, say from '75 until '78. We ran our club from '75 until '84. The reason why we were no longer there is that they tore it down to build a mall. So we would have stayed. But we just, I guess it was everything. It was the advent of disco music. It was Saturday Night Fever. It was social. It was economical. It was everything. Everybody just wanted to change. You know, it was all about the bright lights. And when we refurbished our club, we put in, you know, nice lights and everything, and had a great stage, and everybody liked it. And you just had to keep things fresh. It broke our heart that we couldn't have the live music, because at that club we played everybody from Teddy Pendergrass to Les McCann to Cobo and Together to Billy Preston. Whoever came through Seattle played that club. But next thing you know, people in Vancouver were talking about, let's go down to the Golden Crown because that's a jamming disco. And it was like, man, we were saving a lot of money.
And in Canada was typically always open to everything. I mean, a lot of the soul groups used to go up to Canada, and you didn't have the same type of attitudes. So you could play different places down in Gastown, at Calgary. You could play other places and stuff. I just want to mention recently one of the best male R&B singer passed away, Sam Smith. So, I mean, this guy was, as a solo singer, there was no one bigger than him. And hopefully, when Wheedle Groove 2 comes out, they can get some tracks with him. I mean, he was like a combination of Luther Vandross, Al Green, just incredible. So there was a lot, I'm saying was, still is, a tremendous amount of talent. You know, now a lot of it is, you know, DJs and rap and stuff and hip hop. So, but Seattle still has a great scene. It's just that R&B era kind of passed. But again, people kind of went into other things. Like, we kind of moved into fusion as Miles Davis was shifting into like Bitches Brew and getting more electric. We were experimenting with that. And some of those groups would come to the Golden Crown, and so I'd go down and see like Bill Summers, Headhunters, and this was so the shift. So we just started changing from playing a Kool in the Gang song to playing something original, and then that's how we got to a lot of the groups now. Kenny and a lot of people, Jeff Lorber came out. So and that music became popular. Grover, Mr. Magic was selling tons of records, unbelievable. I remember the first night we went to go see George Benson. And we were expecting to hear White Rabbit and some of his old great stuff. And he says, I'm going to sing. What? You're a guitar player. You don't sing. He sang, and that same year he made Masquerade, and I think he's done okay.
You know, one of the things that amazes me coming, as I said, I got my first job in radio back in Buffalo, New York, back in the late 60s. Okay, I was like 16 years old. To now, what these people are doing today just amazes me. What's happened technically, from the ways we used to make commercials at a radio station where we had to splice tape together, you know, and it would take us an hour and a half to make a 30-second commercial. Now, with the new technology and the geniuses that you guys are out there, I mean, you know, you guys are my heroes, because we're talking about something that happened a generation ago. You know, from the things that we did 25 years ago to what you have access to now. I don't know anything about what you do, so now I become the student again, you know, and that's just amazing. As I walk around here and I see all this stuff, I'm like, where am I? You know, this is like Star Trek Twilight Zone to me. You know?
But you guys,
so you guys are some strong people, and I'm really proud of you. And it just, you know, thank you for teaching me, and I will be holding my hand up asking for help.
See, I know the graphic design side of the Max, but not the music side. Our guitar player, Glenn Lorbecki, has a studio, and he gets on there, and we'll go to do a session. Or sometimes I do, you know, radio commercials and stuff, and I just play one pass. Okay, thanks, Tony. What are you talking about? There's 2 or 3 more minutes. I got to play the chorus again. No, we got it. I did a session in Microsoft. Same thing. We need this timbali part. Plum, plum, plum. Okay, I'm waiting for the rest of the song. We got it. Thank you. We'll take care of it in Pro Tools. Or sing one pass around on the chorus and do it in Pro Tools. That's cool, but as far as musicianship, it's better if you can actually sing all the parts. And I won't mention the artist's name, but she is a judge on a television show.
Paula?
Oh, I didn't say that. But, you know, there's a difference between Aretha Franklin and some of the artists, and you could, I'm not going to say the blonde lady's name that just had a kid or anything, but you should be able to sing a whole song. It's from a musician standpoint, you know,
Yeah.
rather than, okay, when the technology did start to change, you'd sing a phrase and then go back and grab a couple sentences, and next thing you know, now it's all digital, but before you'd have a whole truck full of 2-inch tape of one song that people are editing and splicing with a razor blade and cutting and splicing to get a seamless part. And so on the musicianship side, but if you're playing jazz or something, you're going to be playing that live anyway. But you know, some of the pop stuff, I don't know about some of that stuff, but that's just me. But the technology is cool. I mean, because you can edit so much faster. You can try different ideas and just lay it down and, you know, do some overdub. Okay, that's a groove, and go on to the next thing. So that would have been nice. Like you were talking about effects. We used to sing a dramatic song called "I Want to Go Outside in the Rain." Mm-hmm. We had a Shure Vocal Master, which was the standard back in the early days. We used to lift it up and drop it to make thunder. You know, the reverb chamber would go, and then, oh, you know, then we start singing the song. Oh, that must be the special effects for this particular song. So it would be whatever you could do. Now you got, you know, synthesizers and everything, you can do all that.
I don't know if you guys realize how much power you have with and how you use this monster called technology. How much power you have to influence everybody in the world. Okay, say for instance, if I had a microphone in a radio station, I'm able to talk to, in a quarter hour, maybe on a lucky day, 20,000 people. But you, through the technology, the internet, mass communication,
Podcasting,
blogging, being
That's
that you
cool.
guys are those geniuses, you just have so much opportunity to do so much good that we wish that we could have done just from the bandstand. That's the only thing that we had. We had small radio stations, we had a bandstand, we were out there spreading goodwill. That's what we were doing. But now, by using this monster, this great gargantuan Mighty Joe Young of a monster of technology, you're able to do these things.
Can I
and
talk
it still
about-
just blows me away when I just realize how much you have at your disposal.
But can I-
And how much good you're going to do and can do with this. I'm sorry. I'm just blown away. I'm sorry.
No, but can I comment on the dark of this monster?
I was going to, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So
But
my
see,
kids.
they don't have a dark side.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all positive.
My kids come to me
Oh, that dark side.
and they start saying, well, they want to download this. They want to. I said, okay, let me explain something. By the way, I'm a member of NARAS, the Pacific Northwest chapter of NARAS, you know, the Recording Academy.
It's the governor.
So I'm not big on downloading. A couple times people come to me and say, man, I love that Camino Island song. That's great. I said, oh, you got that off the first album? No, I downloaded it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. But my kids wanted to download and their friends were burning and all this stuff. And I said, well, the next time you ask me for that new bike or that new pair of Jordans, I don't have the money for that because your friends are downloading and taking this music from other artists without paying for it. And I mean, if the artist chooses to give you the music, well, that's fine, or if it's promotional stuff, but I'm not big on. That's why I was happy to see iTunes come out. And part of the problem that happened with this downloading issue is that the record industry, or the music industry, didn't keep in step with technology. When this technology started changing, they should have just been right there rather than, you know, now it's very difficult to preach to some of the young kids about downloading and, you know, taking stuff off the internet because that's what they grew up with, you know. Yeah, I bought 100 pack of CDs and I'm gonna party. What about the artist? So that's why it's good, iTunes and some of the other, you know, but the problem was it was technical. There was no vehicle for you to pay. So when they used to burn something, I'd tell them, okay, I want you to put $2 in this envelope and send it to the musician.
Right.
You know, if you download this, I want you to send it not to the manager or the record company, send it to the writer or the artist. And so they got tired of doing that. So then, you know, I had to buy them iPods and Apple Cards. So, which is cool with me.
Yeah, I think
That's the dark side.
that is interesting. Like every generation just seems to get creative with whatever they got at their disposal, you know.
Amazing,
And
just amazing.
yeah, I think you're right about the musicianship element is sort of perhaps lacking a little bit nowadays. Not to say that it can't be, you know, can't come back again, but yeah, I mean, just the energy of working in a band, you know, that's something where you are collaborating with a group of people and they're all bringing energy to the stage, you know, and that's something that I think, you know, that type of music anyway on that Wheedle Groove CD, it's just got that energy coming out of the speakers, you know, that sounds like a great group effort. And I'm just interested to know, you know, when this band scene kind of started to maybe just change into something else and bands weren't working so much, people were going off and maybe starting other careers and stuff like I'm interested to know sort of how what you guys got up to after that period and when your club closed and all that. And what did you do?
What I did, when I left KYAC, and it was just such a blur because I left KYAC in the mid-'70s, and one of the natural progressions for DJs was to go to work for a record company. So what I did, I went to work for ABC Records, which was a distributor here in Seattle. We had a lot of different labels. Subsequently, going from ABC, I went to work for Motown Records. I did promotion for Motown. I love Motown. I hated the label. Oh God, it was just like the most corrupt business company I've ever worked for. But I enjoyed the artists. I worked with Stevie Wonder, worked with Marvin Gaye. I traveled and worked with these guys and worked with them for about 2 years. After that, I made a transition and went to work for Chrysalis Records for 19 years. So at Chrysalis, I did promotion and marketing for them for the West Coast. My market was from Alaska down to LA and east to Denver. And the great thing about Chrysalis, which was just a wonderful experience, was that Chrysalis was a real boutique type label. At Chrysalis, you did just about everything. You were A&R, you were promotion, you were marketing, you were tour manager, you were babysitter, you were everything. And when I went to work for Chrysalis, there were just a couple of artists on that label, Leo Sayer, Jethro Tull, pretty much. But I came in, they signed Blondie, they signed Billy Idol, they signed Huey Lewis, they signed Pat Benatar, they signed Billy Idol. They said, did I say Billy Idol? But it was just really a great experience because it was totally hands-on. So I stayed with them for about 19 years. And it was great. I had the best time. I got a chance to travel. I still maintain my relationship with these artists, you know, with Huey and Pat Benatar and what have you. But the other thing that I'm doing at the same time, I've maintained a relationship with Tony. Tony's been my great friend for over 30 years. In Cobo Together was when they played my house, the house I still live in, was the band house. And Kenny G, who was always there, the first band member there and the last one to leave, I think Kenny still has a key to my house, okay? So that's how tight I have been with these guys. Yeah.
And you didn't mention the fact that Bobby was the first DJ in the United States to play a song by AWB called Pick Up the Pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
happen to have that.
Yeah. You know, so not only was he breaking acts regionally, because KYC for some reason had a reputation far around the globe, people would start sending songs to KYC, see if that would be a place to break something.
That was kind of cool too, you know, that they would do that. No one was really paying attention to any stations, any soul stations on AM, or our AM station was 1460, and you can barely hear it. And then we had an FM station, was 96.5. And it was a low power station, like 19,000 watts or whatever it was. But what we did, we went out there and really marketed this radio station. We reported to the Gavin Reports. We would send our playlists to Billboard. We would let them know what was happening. And we took chances on bands. We played, we were the first station to play Abandoned Luncheonette by Hall & Oates, and that album. And their first single was She's Gone. And of course, we played the first album by Average White Band. But we were breaking records left and right. We were one of the first R&B stations to play Benny and the Jets. So it was kind of like a cool thing.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, managers and record companies are coming after us and really trying to get us to play records. And we really supported the good music. So,
yeah. With me being a graphic designer, we played in CBT, and then things started changing. People were trying to go in different directions. And so I worked for Boeing, gained 70 pounds there, because it was the first time I ever had a paycheck. As a starving musician or artist, you're not getting a regular check. And so it was like, whoa. And I was like, wow, settle down, kid. You're going to get another one in 2 weeks. I was like, what? So, you know, me and the Colonel and Southern Comfort became friends, and Kool-Aid and the King and a few friends of mine. But so I just kept doing my graphic design thing, and so finally I decided to start my own studio, and I've had the opportunity to travel around the world and speak in Tokyo and Chicago and around in design, as well as being a musician. So if I go to Tokyo, when I was on tour with Kenny, I'd say, if you want a free ticket to come see Kenny G, I get to come and visit your studio. So that's how I got to meet a lot of famous and well-known graphic designers. And if I'd have had a laptop or a PowerBook then, I would still be on the road, because then I'd be on the tour bus, I'd do my work, do my sketches, then the next hotel, then I'd FedEx it back to my studio in Seattle, they'd comp it up and then fax it to the next gig that we play, and then I'd look at it, and now it would just be amazing having the technology. I mean, we had a 4-track recording Tascam cassette recorder in the back of the tour bus and stuff, and Kenny went off to go play sax with Jeff Lorber. The other band members started playing in other groups, writing songs, becoming television producers. So we all stayed in media and you know, the creative services. And then when I was doing my studio, I left Boeing for creativity, because that's what I wanted to do in my heart. And then Kenny called me one day and played me this song. It's kind of sing-songy. I don't know if I like this song. Well, I guess I don't know anything, because it became #5 in the country. It's called Songbird. Because as a percussionist, I want things to drive and funk and this. By the way, I'm glad that a lot of groups that we idolized, I took my 9-year-old son to see Santana a couple weeks ago. So the guy who started, I mean, he's bigger than ever. If you had told me during the period of the CBT era that this geeky guy playing the sax was going to sell more records than Grover Washington, Ronnie Laws, Pearl Jam, I would have said, what are you smoking? There's no way. No, you know. We used to make him sing, play that funky music, White Boy, Wild Cherry. We just make him sing it. He couldn't sing that good, but he could play the sax. But he called one day and said, hey, I think this Songbird is going to do okay, and do you want to come and tour? Well, to support my design studio, at the time, a laser writer cost $5,000. Okay? So that was kind of expensive. So by going on tour with him, not only did I get a chance to see a lot of other graphic design studios, but get to hear and hang out with musicians, Miles Davis, I mean, Chick Corea, all kind of festivals, you know, from playing at a tavern with 4 people with a Shure vocal master to playing at Carnegie Hall, sold-out show with one of my friends that was in the band. That was just extraordinary. And a lot of people in this band went on to play with the Daz Band, like I said, Mays, Ashford and Simpson. So very strong musicianship, not only from this group, but other groups in Seattle. A lot of the groups on Wheedle's Groove. People are still gigging, still playing. It's our life. It's our love, being creative and stuff. Kenny's doing okay. He's playing a lot of golf. So that opportunity to try meeting Grover, getting to hang out with these guys, being backstage, talking to them, how do they make songs, that kind of creative was just extraordinary. And so it's still continuing to do graphic design and music. The group now that we work with, it's called 206 because most of the writers and the musicians are from Seattle. So that's what we continue to do. We've had some success in that as well, so that's what we'll continue to do.
Yes, I mean, obviously, because you're there at the forefront of this music, and I mean, it's like, to the outsider, it looks like, oh, there was this amazing music, and it kind of just went away, and then it's come back again. But really, it didn't. It just turned into something else. It just kept on, and these guys, a lot of these guys are still playing.
Right.
But I mean, then this, this label, this local Seattle label, Light in the Attic. This guy Matt Sullivan who runs that label.
Well, yeah, Matt.
For him,
yeah.
he came to the music. Even though he's from Seattle, he came to the music by getting a 7-inch or a little single. He didn't know. He couldn't believe it was from Seattle. He didn't know about the music. And there's people who are from Seattle who are thinking, oh, I've found this. I've discovered the lost music scene. But I mean, it's funny. Just they weren't there to actually witness it for themselves and couldn't see it change into just develop into something else. But it's interesting that this next generation, with all the internet and with the computers and whatnot, are sort of now discovering it and enjoying it, and the music is actually traveling. It's traveling around the world. I mean, I heard the CD in Wellington and in New Zealand, and I've heard it. I know it's going well all around the world, and I just want to know sort of what you think about that.
I think that's one of the great things about this record is that some of these artists who followed on some hard times, economically, socially, have been rejuvenated by this. Yeah. I'm seeing guys like Ronnie Buford. I mean, there are quite a few artists here who have really, really been down on their luck. But this is a chance for them to revive a career. They get out there to do the things that they did so well a long time ago. Yeah, they may be a little long in the tooth, but anytime you can boost someone's spirit, anything that would be a catalyst to help boost your spirits, I think it's a good thing. Hopefully they'll make some money. Hopefully people go out and buy this. Hopefully you'll talk about this when you go back home. Hopefully you will never forget this, and even maybe there'll be a part 2 to this to really get those artists back on their feet again. That's one of the things that I was really excited about it. How I became involved in this. Tony had had spoken with Matt because Matt wanted Tony's some music from Kobo together, and Matt at the time was having such a hard time getting in touch with some of these artists because they're like, who's this guy? Who's this Matt dude? Get away from me. Shoot, get away. So Matt asked me to sit down and talk to him. I really believed in what he was doing, and I just thought that it was like a no-brainer for these artists who had this music that just sat dormant in their basement somewhere, doing nothing. You might as well put it out there and let people get a chance to hear it. So I acted as an emissary, and I went out and got some of these people to sign on. And next thing you know, we got about 6 or 7 of the artists who had not made any commitment to this project. They came about. And there we are.
Well, it was a great opportunity when I spoke to Matt. A lot of us had thought about doing this, but you're so focused on what you're doing. It takes somebody, an outsider, to kind of come in and recognize something that was really great and wonderful and then put it together. And so that was really cool. I know he has a team of people that he's worked with at the Light in the Attic and stuff. And when he first started talking about it, it was like, okay, is this really going to happen? No, he said, I'm serious. I really want to find these artists and make this happen. And I saw it as an opportunity to document this era that was really not discovered and really...
no one had told the story. The story had not been recorded. People knew about it. It was here and there, but there was never really a piece.
Yeah. And you hear about Seattle, Jackson Street, the jazz era that was here. You hear about the Ray Charles and Quincy Jones, and those guys are just tremendous. We actually had the opportunity to open for Ray Charles and Jamie Foxx with 206, so that was kind of cool seeing the movie Ray. So this was a great opportunity to kind of go back and grab this whole era and then put it out there for people to hear. Because when people hear it, they're like, wow, I don't remember this. Well, maybe you were on the other side of the town, or you didn't get into the club where we were playing, or you didn't go here and stuff. But it was very vibrant, and everybody that hears a record from that era here is like, they remember such good times. It's no different than if you put on an old "My Girl" by the Temptations. You say, "Oh yeah, I remember this and that," and you just get your groove on.
But
same thing with this music as well.
It really makes me feel good, and I'm quite surprised, and I don't know why I'm surprised, but when I hear you say, like, wow, I heard this record, I was just blown away, and I'm saying, wow, I used to play these records 80 times a day. Yeah. I got so sick and tired of hearing them, even though they were great songs. When they went away, they were like, fine, that's just an oldie. But to see a generation later, these songs come back and be relived as they are, wow, what attracted you to that? What did attract you to that? Something that you had not heard?
Well, no, I do a bit of DJing in Wellington, just in bars, playing old soul music and stuff that I pick up, from the thrift shop for $1, stuff like that. And I kind of collect a lot of records, and then I start looking at more of the compilations that are coming out and digging a bit rarer. You don't get a lot of rare records down in New Zealand, but a lot of stuff gets reissued, a lot of compilations start to come out. And so I kind of came to this compilation, in that way. And those songs have an effect on the dance floor down there.
Really?
So yeah.
Wow.
That's just amazing, man. It's like
that's great.
Everything Otis knew again.
Definitely that Robbie Hill's Family Affair, that I Just Want to Be Like Myself. I first found that on a French compilation, I think, from a few years ago. So that song had definitely come out somewhere. And I think, because that song did go to #1 in Seattle, didn't it, for a little while?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And I think it was, ahead of James Brown and ahead of the OJs and all that. So that's, the band got a good achievement there. But that was the song that really stuck out for me on that particular French compilation. So it was great to see it on the album.
And I think this is pretty much just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure that all these artists, and there are so many other bands that have not been compiled on Wheedle's Groove.
Or anywhere.
Anywhere.
This is the beginning of revisiting and rediscovering this very viable and vibrant community of musicians, and hopefully it will just continue on. Because
we had spoken with Matt about that, and you could put just so much music on a first release, but there'll be more coming out. I would imagine.
Well, I want to thank you very much for
putting.
Questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
Before we?
Oh yeah.
We're just.
We're just
soul survivors.
We're just blah blah blah. So,
anybody have any?
Anybody?
Yep.
Questions?
Yes. Oh.
All right. I had two questions. The first question was kind of in the comparison between what was going on here versus what was going on in Detroit. And with Motown, there were a lot of studio players, studio drummers, studio bass players that were playing on all the tracks. But here it wasn't really like that. You had all the bands quite separately, and the bass player was playing bass for this band and not the other one. Or how was it? Did the people mix and mingle a bit, or was it really this bit competitive atmosphere, like you said, where people were really...
I would say that Motown, that's like the home office. It's like Motown's here, everywhere else was just totally different. The Funk Brothers.
The Funk Brothers and all the movie, I think it's called Behind the Shadows, if you watch
Standing in the
that.
Shadows.
Standing in the Shadows. Those were tremendous musicians, and they were jazz players, but they were backing all of the tracks for all of these these were vocal artists. That's why the Beatles had a big impact on me when I first saw them on Ed Sullivan. Of course, my mom wanted them to get a haircut. That was the first time I saw a band playing and singing, and that's what kind of attracted me to the British invasion, because most of the groups, the soul groups, there'd be, Otis Redding would be out front, and then there'd be a band, but the band was kind of back here, and the single artist or the solo artist was out front. Whereas in most of the groups in Seattle, that happened sometimes, but then there was kind of a change, so it was more integrated, and part of that came about because of the Sly and the Earth, Wind & Fire, where there was more than one vocalist. There were 2 vocalists or 3 vocalists, and the band was an integral part. They just were not the backup band. You know, it could be interchanged. I mean, people came not only to see this singer with us, or, you know, Keith Hooks, or, you know, different people in the band, but also for the bass player, it was just part of the personality. So I actually don't remember any time with us ever recording on somebody else's
Right,
tracks.
exactly.
This was, you know.
If you're with Cobo together, you're with Cobo together.
Yeah, that's your crew.
If you're with Black and White Affair, Manuel Stanton did not come and play bass on a Cobo together record.
That's
so no,
turf.
it was just.
I mean, it would have probably been okay, but I don't think we really
I
thought
never saw that happen.
You
That's a
know,
great
and
question.
stuff. And we do gigs together. Like CBT, we played for the free breakfast program for the Panthers because they were trying to feed kids in the morning to go to school. So there was a lot of community activity playing for people. So there'd be times when we were all on the same show, but we're on different teams.
Yeah, it was a turf competition thing.
I mean,
now
like,
everybody plays on everybody else's
well,
records here in town.
You know, I'd get Bernadette to come over and help on a song. You see what I mean? So it's, you know, and I don't know if that's because of maturing and you got a little bit older, but at that time it was like, hey, we're on the Raiders, we're on this. There were no Seahawks in those days. You know, we're on the Raiders.
I don't think there was any performance sophistication back in that day either, you know, because you didn't see how great that would be for a person like Bernadette Bascom to go and sing background vocals on another artist's record, whereas Robbie Hill would say like, oh no, that can't happen.
Right.
Because they just didn't have that, we just didn't know how to do that, didn't know how to process that.
And it was even rare for people to change bands.
Oh yeah.
You know, maybe a lead singer might,
Oh, that's very rare.
but that was just very rare. I mean, you were with that band until you died, or you know, and stuff. And that did happen, unfortunately. Or you went to jail. Yeah, you know.
You know,
kinda
and
have a
another thing, Seattle was way up here. Okay.
Yeah.
We are so far away from everybody that it was just hard to. You really didn't get the influences that you would in, say, if you were a band in the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, you may have some bleed over from the influence of LA. Okay. In Detroit, you may get some influence from Chicago. In Philly, there was some New York influence and what have you. In Seattle, we were just here. And that's the thing that really amazes me about how well the Seattle and how strong the Seattle music scene was, because there wasn't a lot of influence unless someone moved from Kansas City to Seattle or what have you. So.
Okay, thanks. That answers my question. And the second thing, when you played this first track earlier, we were kind of making a joke that everyone in the room is going to be swooping in to see what that first loop is and to load it into their MPC. And I was wondering if you guys know, I guess you know about kind of the way a lot of people are making music these days, like digging through the stacks for this one track or this one bass groove or this one trumpet line, and what your reaction is to that kind of music, how you feel about it. Have you heard it? Like, what's up with that?
I think it's up to the artist. It's funny now, you know, now that we're grown-ups, we're hearing commercials with the Rolling Stones song, or, you know, you hear a Chevy commercial and there's a song that was like an anthem for change in the world, and now is, you know, behind a Kleenex commercial. You see what I mean? It's just different. The commercialization,
I
the
want to take you
global.
higher.
So I think a lot of artists would just say, okay, don't forget to send me a check. But some artists may say, no, this goes with this song and it's not going to be separated. But I was glad to see that, you know, hip hop artists and rap artists started paying for some of that stuff, like Hammer.
James Brown,
yeah, I mean, well, to
Rick
us,
James.
that was Rick James.
Right.
It was like, Hammer, my kids are hearing a song, have you ever heard of this group? And I'm like, oh God, you know, or on George Lopez's TV show, starts off with a war song.
Oh yeah,
and they're like,
Lowrider.
Yeah, Lowrider, and the kids are like, hey, do you like that song?
Yeah.
I played that song 5 million times. Right. You know, so it's just different. But no, it would depend on what, I would hope that who you were taking or sampling the music from would have some input, because they may not like what you're going to do to it, and they should have that right to say, well, no, I don't want that. And other people are going to say, just send me a check. So it just depends on who the artist is. But I'm, I'd be open to it. I'm sure a lot of people.
I'm like, as long as if it's good and creative, have fun with it.
Well, yeah.
Come on. Great. Somebody, if you can come up with something from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and bust that open, do it. So as long as, if you feel good about it, if you have respect for the music, have fun with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of grooves. There's so much music, not just here, but in Ohio and in the South, Atlanta. There's all kind of groups that did not make it to the big stage that have tremendous amounts of vaults of grooves and beats and stuff. So there's an untapped resource of things that could be combined with modern technology that would be successful. So.
I guess though, sorry, I'm just at the back here. Yeah, I guess for us, a lot, speaking for people in this room that make hip-hop music or produce using samples, a lot of these people would be effectively taking the open drums at the start of that track we listened to and looping that up, basically, And I mean, I think you mentioned Balling Jack earlier on. Right.
Yeah, Balling Jack.
Are they a group from around here?
Yeah.
Okay, Balling Jack, 2 of the records, they got drum breaks on them, and that's the only reason I know the name of that group. So I guess we're just really interested to see if you guys would be annoyed if we're looping up bits of your records, really.
No, I don't see anybody who would be annoyed by that.
Again, I think it just depends on the artist. I mean, like, that song started off with, the drummer was Harry Alexander. He had what we call a funk foot, and stuff. And just, a lot of great drummers, musicians. And we were experimenting as well because the technology with instrumentation was changing, different, everybody wanted to be Hendrix. How can we get this sound, out of this box and stuff? So I guess it just depends on the artist or something that you're listening to, if you would, just indicate your interest that, hey, I like that beat. Could I use that?
So it's a question of asking permission always, or because
I think
traditionally in hip hop that hasn't been the case really. I mean, open drums in a court of law doesn't really constitute music until very recently,
See, have you ever heard Brick House? Okay, that signature at the beginning of Brick House, to me, that's a copyright. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but I mean, if I hear that, I know that that's Brick House. Just like if somebody was singing it. So if I heard that on a hip hop song, I would hope that you would contact the Commodores.
But wouldn't that just be, maybe I'm so naive that I'm thinking that hopefully it would be a professional given. I'm just hoping that's what it would be, as respect to the artist or the originator of the music, Why
sort
put
of
yourself
like
through all that
what
labor?
Harvey was saying the other day, it's like if you use a piece of someone else's music, it's all good until you start making a lot of money off it, and it's kind of like you got to make sure that you let them know, if it blows up,
I mean, because traditionally in hip hop, the whole part of the ethos is really to find the most obscure sample, the most obscure drum break that no one else has got, and thus by not clearing it, protect that sound. Thus, a DJ or producer is then associated with that drum sound forever, and no one else can find where he got it from. So, I'm just really interested to see what you guys make of all of that.
If we were back in the day, everybody was very protective of whatever they did. I mean, like this drummer, literally would, if you tried to take a beat, he'd show up at your house with a shotgun. So again, like I said, everybody were crews, and we had instruments. Well, we did have weapons, but but it's different now. So again, like Bobby was alluding to, the courtesy. I guess it's courtesy, and I don't know if that's proper in hip hop and stuff. But at some point, you start hearing it on the radio, and you start seeing it on Billboard.
Yeah.
You'll probably hear from somebody's attorney at one point.
It's an infringement. Yeah.
So, but it'd be interesting to see how. I actually had an opportunity this year for the first time. I was in Chicago at a roof party, and there happened to be percussion there, but there was no percussionist. But there was a DJ, and they were just inviting people to come up and play, and I started playing. I said, this is kind of fun. Because, the dance, I get on the dance floor and, shake my groove thing. And then I saw the percussion, and I got up there and started playing. Hey, you can play. Yeah. And just started having fun with the beats and stuff. And it was kind of cool because, hey, I can take a break, get a drink, the beat's still going on, come back up there, play congas, and okay, I'm gonna take another. Hey, how you doing? So it was actually kind of fun. So.
But see, this is a conversation that I've never heard this conversation. We would have this conversation 30 years ago. I don't remember there being any infringement issues going about a long time ago because whatever came out from Cobo Together was Cobo Together. Nobody ever came back from Atlanta and said hey, love song turned sad. We've got a song that's just like that. So, but that's interesting. That's an interesting.
I guess it's just kind of like if you think of how many funk tunes basically rip off the groove from Cold Sweat.
Yeah.
How many late '60s, early '70s tunes?
Well, James Brown started to get paid though.
James Brown, man,
he's getting those royalty checks
because that. He went after everything.
Because I used to hear like a hip hop song or something, and I'd say, that's James Brown, but at some point, I guess they had to start,
But I mean, even the first time around, the first time around, funk groups would hear James Brown and be like, "Yo, we need to make a group that sounds like this."
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just wondering if this is a modern day phenomenon of that, And I mean, what made you guys want to make a specific kind of music? Was it hearing someone like James Brown and really wanting to imitate that style?
I think it was more genre related.
I think it was genre related.
It was more genre related than to sound like somebody else. I think you want to find something that was within that, within that ballpark. Hey, that's a hit record. That's a hit sound. You've got, going back to Motown, you've got the Supremes, and also you have the Marvelettes. They were both girl groups. They were a little bit different, but they were still pretty much of the same genre. They were still soulful acts or whatever. So if you had Cobo Together, speaking of Tony's band, I knew what the genesis of this band was from a standpoint of where they wanted to, what parameters or where they were going to put themselves into, because you guys were really a dance-oriented band,
right.
A funk Latin type thing that still had some overtures or maybe some Kool and the Gang, maybe some Earth, Wind and Fire, but a lot of different things.
But at some point as a musician, you do listen to other artists and you do learn their chops, or you try and get to that point, because then you kind of mature as an artist. At first, you can't play like that. And then, I can do that.
Yeah.
But then the next question is, now, can I think of something just as good? Right. And then we weren't Earth, Wind, and Fire. We weren't Kool and the Gang, So who are we? And then as artists and musicians, you started to kind of look inside, and we don't want to sound like that group over there. And so everybody has a very distinct, different sound. Even though we all maybe would share the same instrumentation, the sound was different. And a lot of that was just on purpose. Mm-hmm. We don't want to sound like that. Mm-hmm. Most of the time in a vocal group in a band, there'd be a first tenor, the Philip Bailey guy, and so there's always, and then there'd be a baritone. So that kind of structure was there, but what are we going to sing about? What are we going to play music about? And just listening to this arrangement, I was like, oh my God, we didn't even start the verse for 45 seconds. That would never happen, and we'd have songs that were 10 minutes long. See, that was back in the FM era, album music, when people would just play a song for 15, 20 minutes. Right. Now it's like, okay, where's the hook? Okay, here's the verse, hit it, come around, okay, maybe go to the B section, come around. It's sometimes, and I'm talking about commercial pop music with hits. It's too much structure.
Are you a producer?
Can I plead guilty?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, sure.
No, this is what I'm saying. So, and I take that you asked that question. I kind of figured that you might be a producer. So, I mean, what is it that you're looking for? I mean, you've got an artist. You're going to find out where you're going to take this artist. That's your job as a producer, right?
Not really.
Okay. Well, what's your process?
Nowadays, I mean, I guess I'm kind of a thief, really, and there's another culprit in this room who works with me. But we take... I mean, it's going to be pretty hard explaining it to Deodato in a couple of weeks' time, basically. But basically, we take chunks out of people's music and glue it back together with a lot of post-production and re-editing.
Really?
To get layers upon layers of sound going.
We did not have... God.
But
Yeah.
it takes a really long
It would have
time.
cost us $1 million to try to do that because you have to go. We just didn't have. Technically, we just couldn't do that, could we? I mean, we couldn't go and take snippets of different things. It would just cost us too much.
But the thing is now as well, like say with those that drum break, with this particular drum break that we're talking about, if you just gave that first like 5 seconds to everybody in this room, every person will come back to you with something different with it.
Right.
That's
So
cool.
it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not taking that and just looping it for 10 minutes and that's it. Everyone's gonna like fuck with it a bit and,
Right.
you know, chop it, move it around. So it's, you know, it's a bit different. It's not so much just taking something. It's like you know, learning a tune to play and then, like you were saying, you know, learning some little run from it that's nice, throwing it into some of your own stuff later on and then developing it and finding something else that goes with it.
Wow.
It's the same kind of thing. We'd take that, you know, twist it, do something else with it and then throw it back. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing, just,
Sure.
you know, it's the way that we do it instead of the way that you would have done it initially, you know?
So would this be masked pretty much? I mean, you would pretty much take that basic.
Yeah, you might not even recognize it in the
Right.
end, you know? It might be pitched down, pitched up,
Right.
chopped, rearranged. It's just, you know, that kind of stuff just has a nice sound like I'd love to have a drum kit in my apartment, but I can't, you know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, you know, that kind of stuff, I'll play the rest of the stuff in, but I'd take that and, you know, chop it and give myself a nice drum groove to play the rest of my stuff
Wow,
over, you
that's
know what I mean? So it's, you know, it's respectful. It's not so much just, you know, snatching
Right,
out and making money
right.
on it. It's
Right.
like a nod back to the people. And
Well, it's creativity on a different level.
Right.
You know, you guys would be doing different things that we would not think of. That and not only the technical aspect, but also just the way of thinking. You know, it's just like arrangements. You know, it's just A section, B section, chorus. Is it going to be like that where you're thinking, can I take this and put this over here, then loop this, and
See, what you're
if it
saying.
sounds cool at the end, it's cool.
What you're saying is that little section would plant a seed within your head that you would just totally make hybrids, and you would just totally grow from that, and to the point where the originator of those beats wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Then it's fair game.
But I guess that like you can use a sample in a good way and use it in a bad way. It's like what's probably what you sing, you both guys sing of samples is like just like taking the main theme from a track and looping it up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's, to me, it's just a bad way of using samples.
Right.
But there's like loads of different ways to work with them. So, you know, it's just yeah. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, in relationship to like graphic design, I mean, it's like, okay, you're taking circles and squares and stuff, and with different technology and Photoshop and doing this and Dreamweaver, things are just changing. Then you actually create a hybrid or something new, and it exists in its own.
Simply to do a collage.
Yeah, yeah,
With images from magazines
right,
or whatever.
Right,
It's the
right.
same thing, but with music. It's
Right.
like a collage.
Collage, yeah.
Taking things and change the context and doing something new. Some kind of.
Once again, I just think that if you're going to do something that's so obvious, you know, the acknowledgement aspect of it comes into play, I would say.
but I'm hearing them saying that it wouldn't be like 8 bars.
Oh, yeah, right. It would
straight,
just be like
or
a
16
snippet,
bars,
yeah.
like when Hammer did. Clearly, that's Rick James's song.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I
Or
mean,
that-
that's it all the way.
Yeah, this is James Brown screaming for 16 bars,
Right.
or something like that. They're
Yeah.
just, you know,
Yeah.
a couple flams here, a hi hat here, and then you've intermixed that with something else, and then you put a bass line, I guess, or I don't know. I've never done that before.
And
But
one thing I wanted to add too is that first of all, before I'm a sampling artist, first of all I'm a record collector. Why? Because I just love this era, let's say from 68 to 73.
Wow.
And that's because the recordings that were made in this period with certain, engineering, it's like you used to record on some stuff that it's just impossible to find today.
Absolutely.
So for somebody like me, well, I can't play any instrument, but if I couldn't even, record with the same warmth you guys had, because it's just not the same thing. So that's why I somehow turned to sampling, because when I sample, I just get that sound I'm looking for. It's really warm and friendly and everything. And, the reason why I'm doing samples is it's also because to show love to that era and incite people to listen to these records, because to me it's just the greatest music ever. It's just the best era. So,
well, as individual artists, I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, sometimes people think Picasso kind of created and developed that look that he's famous for. If you ever go to Africa, you'll see a lot of that. So influences happen to everybody, So and that's just natural. And then hopefully you'll find your own voice, and then be able to do that. But yeah, everything was warmer because everything was analog. We're dealing with tapes and digging up the tape. By the way, digging up the tapes for this was quite a challenge. Okay, is that under the dog's bed in the basement? Where is that reel at? And then I had to take it to Fast Tracks, and they luckily they helped me kind of get some of the tracks back, because we didn't, you made those songs, and if you didn't get a hit record, well, okay, that's kind of gone, and now I'm a plumber. Then somebody says, hey, you still have this? And luckily most of us did put out records. Right. So we had a lot of 45s left, and then Matt could either clean them up, or if you could find the original tracks. But even though we have 2-inch tapes and stuff, you have to find an analog 24-track recording. A lot of things now are digital, or Pro Tools, and the board is about this big, and you got a big 30-inch widescreen Mac monitor, and and stuff. But it sounds cool.
One thing I'd like to add to about what you just said, I'm just quoting the introduction from a friend of mine's album. It's actually a sample he found, and some guy is saying that if you copy from one guy, then it's plagiarism. But if you copy from several guys, then it's research. And I consider my work research.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Thank you for allowing us to shoot the breeze. We got one more. Another question back there?
We got a question. This is so cool. There you go.
There we go. Maybe it's a perfect time for us to take you guys in the studio instead of the other way around, and do some chopping up with a beat. Let us show how we work, because it's we've been here for a week. Normally it's like these big studio romantics before us taking us to the studio. Maybe it would be nice if we could show it, if we could show you, like, this is how the way we work, this is a possible way of working, this is maybe a song or a track we'll do with it.
Do you have something?
No, you have something.
Oh, do we have something?
Yeah, and there's enough talent and creative inspiration over here to make something happen.
Well, one thing that changed in Seattle, and I'm sure maybe the other parts of the country, the album recording studios kind of died and kind of went away. These huge studios with double boards and all that stuff. Everything has been is smaller, and some of the focus has gone from making original music to making commercial music. Like I said, I'll come in and like do a 60-second commercial and play, 4 bars. Thanks. What?
Right.
And stuff. So it's kind of changed. So it might be difficult to find. Bad Animals is famous. Have you guys ever heard of Bad Animals? It's a great studio here. It was actually K. Smith, and then it expanded. Hart and some other investors bought
Everybody recorded there.
And everybody recorded there at K. Smith, and Bad Animals, and even at Glenn Lorbecki's Glen Sound. They also do commercials, but they still are recording original music and original tracks for albums, and that's just been a shift in how everything works. And now even us, as a fusion band, you got to be able to play together, but we still do overdubs. We go in and start overdubbing and now with the internet. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Fun.